here's Brody Brazil.
The voicemail line is open anytime you're ready at 1-833-4-BRODY. I literally listen to every single call, and then I get to play back and respond to the very best ones.
Hey, Brody. This is Alfredo from Southern California. I want to know your thoughts and intake of the college football, how it was decided, how they snubbed, or did you feel Notre Dame, did you feel like Alabama should have been eliminated because they lost to the championship game? Or do you believe championship games should not matter? Do you get punished or not, no matter if you win or loss? And do you think Miami deserves to be there instead of
Notre Dame,
even because of their meet in week 1 where Miami did beat Notre Dame? I want to know your opinion. Do you think Notre Dame gets snubbed? Or did you think Notre Dame deserves to be there and Alabama out? Thank you.
Alfredo, thank you very much for the very timely call. This all went down yesterday as I'm publishing this video. Let me first say, before we isolate Notre Dame and talk about their situation and talk about how they've responded to it, pulling themselves out of any bowl game contention, that's craziness. The process here is all screwed up. The situation here is all messed up. Now, I kind of do believe in this method for choosing college basketball teams to participate in March Madness, not because there's more teams, but because each of these teams have played more games. And yes, there are more teams because you're talking about 64, but every team has a record of 25 to 30 plus games that they've played in a season. So strength of schedule is important, but a lot of times you can just say, well, they've got 1 or 2 more or fewer wins or losses or whatever, and you can justify one team being in and another team being out. It seems like when we've narrowed it down to 12 teams that a selection committee is deciding upon, and a lot of these teams have identical records, and some of these teams have played each other head-to-head. Some are in a conference. Notre Dame's obviously not in a conference. It's all apples and oranges. There are different flavors and versions and varieties of everything, so it's all up for interpretation. What are we doing here? To really get to the ultimate national champion of college football, it's never going to be a fair process. Like, inevitably, every single year, we're going to have at least a snub or 2 or several. But in this case, this time around, it's Notre Dame, and it makes it a lot more interesting because of who Notre Dame played this year, what they did after they were 0-2, they won 10 straight games, and also the fact that I'll eventually touch on this, they were ranked above Miami every single week in the rankings since the start of November. So let's go one by one here on all the main points. Miami did beat Notre Dame by 3 points in week 1. When was week 1? It was August 31st. And here we are, December 7th and 8th, talking about who ultimately is a better football team. Just because Miami beat Notre Dame back in August, does that reflect how we stand here going into a national championship playoff bracket? It's up for interpretation like it was this season. Miami did beat Notre Dame, and if that's the case, Miami has been a better football team than Notre Dame since August. But is it possible to say that Notre Dame got better, Notre Dame evolved, Notre Dame grew, Miami got better or worse? How do we know? The fact that we're literally basing a head-to-head matchup on something that happened several months ago, like when it was 100 degrees outside, right? That's craziness that it matters at the end of the year. But what else do we have to go on? The counterpoint, and I'm not trying to sell you on that point, I'm just making that point to also tell you the counterpoint is, well, if Miami is on Notre Dame's schedule in a season and Miami beats Notre Dame even by 3 points, even back in August, they still beat Notre Dame. And that's the end of that. But then there's the problem that, like I said before, since November, the beginning of November, Notre Dame had appeared higher in the weekly rankings than Miami did. And I'm making the big Notre Dame-Miami thing here because I do believe if we're talking about one team that could be in and one team that could be out, it's probably Notre Dame in and Miami out. Miami didn't even play in their conference championship game. To the point about Alabama, they played in a championship game and they got waxed in the SEC championship game. So there's a lot to chew on, digest, think about here. Again, this is the problem when there are so many teams, so few spots, and not enough games and record-wise to understand who a team really is by the end. I get it. Like, Notre Dame racked off 10 wins in a row. They started 0-2 and totally turned their season around. And yeah, Notre Dame probably thought that Miami loss was no big deal. They probably thought that, hey, we're ranked higher than them. That's been swept under the rug. Turns out when it mattered most, Miami was selected to be in the playoffs and Notre Dame wasn't. These are two schools and two teams that are both 10-2. But again, Miami wasn't even in their conference championship game. And we'll talk about the whole conference situation here. Let's just do it now to a little certain extent. I know we'll get there at the very end. Like, if you're Notre Dame and you get to make your schedule every year and you put two really tough games on your schedule in week 1 and week 2, right? So you've got Miami week 1, you've got Texas A&M in week 2, and you only lose to Texas A&M by 1, but then you're beating other teams like, is it Syracuse? They beat 70-7? It's hard to really get a gauge of who that team is. This is Notre Dame's choice, and I really think that because all this, they ought to consider being in a conference. It might really, the way college sports is going, it might be hurting them every single year. As much as it used to be the luxury and they got to enjoy being the oddity of not being in a conference, it might now hurt your chances of this college football playoff format by you not being in a conference, by you not being in a group of schools and doing well against that group of schools and getting to a championship game. But here's Miami that didn't even play in the ACC championship game. And again, identical records, Miami beat Notre Dame by 3 points. Then you also have Notre Dame, who lost their first 2 weeks. Again, 0-2 and losing to two very good teams, like head-to-head. If we look at who their wins are against, a lot lesser teams. There's some good teams, but there's a lot lesser teams in there. But they also lost to two very good teams, like Texas A&M. They lost by 1. Was it 41-40? That was in week 2. But despite that, so they lost 2 games. They lost 1 game by 3 points. They lost the next week by 1 point. They lost 2 games by a total of 4 points. And then Notre Dame went on to outscore their opponents this year by 297 points. Some teams don't even score a total of 297 points all season long. But they outscored their opponents by almost 300 points. They were very good. They were very dominant. But again, this is the schedule that they get to play out every year. And they don't necessarily get to play all the dominant schools because a lot of them are off in conference action and there's not even the opportunity to do so. So it kind of brings me here to the last point. A school like Notre Dame that's not in a conference, that's playing against some weaker opponents, that's going to have that probably held against them to a certain degree. Combine that with the process of human selection here, and I am not suggesting that AI should be picking these teams. I really don't want a computer doing that. I feel even worse about that, if you can believe it. But I just feel like this is always going to be imperfect. We're always going to have snubs. It's just more interesting this year because of the Miami aspect, the no conference aspect. And now let me close it by saying I find it very interesting that Notre Dame has put on social media, put it in a press release, that they are not wanting to be considered to be in a bowl game for 2025 into 2026. For the end of this football season, they're like, you know what? We didn't get into the college football playoff bracket, so we're done. Don't even invite us to a bowl game. Now that, to me, it comes off the wrong way, right? Like, you are kind of robbing your student athletes, your semi-professional athletes. You're robbing them of the experience of at least getting to play in something to finish out their year. If you really have a chip on your shoulder and you're the Fighting Irish, go beat up somebody in the whatever bowl, right? But they're not even offering their kids the opportunity to do that. They're saying, you know what, we're taking our ball and we're going home. I don't really think that's the most mature way to handle this. I get it. They're upset. They feel snubbed. Let the headlines dictate that narrative, right? You don't need to be part of that by saying, we're not playing in this game, we're done, we're upset. If you really are upset, like I said, number 1, go play in a bowl game and crush somebody. Or number 2, join a conference. There's plenty of teams and schools moving around on an every year, every summer basis. I would imagine it's not that hard for a conference to swoop you right in and get you in their conference ASAP, so none of this kind of ever happens again. So let me know what you think. I guess to answer the question, number 1, I think the process stinks. We're going to have snubs like this every single year. Number 2, I think, Notre Dame has a very good case of why they should probably be in, why they felt a little misled. But at the end of the day, you did lose to a team that got in, and they got in and you didn't, and they beat you, and it's as simple as that. And Notre Dame could help itself so that they didn't get snubbed. They may have put a little bit too much trust in the process, and it's a flimsy process. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Also, a thumbs up while you're down there. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so I can definitely see you back here next time.